Okay, for tomorrow's video, let's see what the next genre is. What's the next series gonna be? And let's just get rid of the one we just did. Okay, well, I've been waiting for this one for a while, so we're gonna go through all the flute pieces. Uh, yeah, I might go low to high, like start with the bass flute, solo bass flute, work our way up to the piccolo pieces. This is a big one. Flute and electronics is huge too, so yeah, let's do it. Okay, so today I'm starting the flute series. Solo flute. The first piece is a bass flute piece by Mario Lavista. Yeah, so we've done a number of Mario Lavista pieces on this channel, specifically his string quartets. This PDF is kind of chopped up, but you can see it's kind of one landscape page of music. And I think that's it. Hopefully there's not more than just this. But it's only 5 minutes of music, I think, or 6 minutes, so this might be the whole thing, just 4 lines at quarter equals 50. It sounds about right. Um, yeah, A la muerte de Raúl Lavista. I'm assuming that's a relative that it's dedicated to. And for those who are unaware, bass flute is like uh, usually the largest member of a flute family, although there's contrabass flute as well, but it's like kind of the biggest flute that you can hold transverse style freely in the air. And it sounds an octave lower than a flute, so it's more like a tenor instrument. Um, yeah. Sometimes they have a B foot, sometimes they don't, I think. Boom, there you go. So pretty well recorded. Some of the recordings are closer to 7 minutes or over 7 minutes long. So yeah, with that, I guess we can just jump into this. Oh yeah, we should look up Raul Lavista and say something about him. Raul Lavista was a Mexican composer of film scores who died in 1980. So yes, that's the one we're looking at. Worked prolifically during the golden age of Mexican cinema. He's the father of photographer Paulina Lavista. And see if I recognize any of these films. They're really old because it's the golden age of cinema. I mean, some of them look like definite horror films, like The Man Without a Face, The Atomic Fireman, but I can't say I recognize any of these. Okay, interesting. Maybe this person used a lot of bass flute in their film scores. It's possible. Um, Pretty young to die. They died at 66. So, yeah, here is Lamento. Okay, my immediate thoughts is it's really slow but really gorgeous, and I love the multiphonics on line 3. That's cool. Um, Obviously a very good performance that I was listening to. I like the moments where it switched from normal playing into a multiphonic or into singing overplaying, right? Those switches in and out are so magical, but also they sound difficult to pull off as like from the performer's perspective. So yeah, really cool idea. I like the notation too. He's got like two layers of phrase markings. The one slur is just like the breath mark, basically, like where you should breathe, and then this like dotted slur is more like the phrasing, and that one can extend over rests if it needs to. So really, really long phrases when you think about it, which poses an interesting challenge to the performer. Um, yeah, I think it showed off the characteristic low register of the bass flute really well, and it's not a bad introduction to like bass flute repertoire, which of course is very small. Tomorrow we have a piece for bass flute and electronics, and I don't think we might have an alto flute piece, but might not. And then we're getting into the normal flute stuff. Okay, so I recorded today's episode without volume, so I'm just gonna go over it all in one go. There's not really gonna be a separation between pre and post listen because I already listened to the thing. So, yeah, this piece is called Huayra, subtitle Vento Notturno by Mexican Italian composer Javier Torres Maldonado. It's written in 2003, but this score is the 2012 version, and it's for bass, flute, and four-channel electronics. I think it's fixed media. It's dedicated to the flautist Gianluigi Nuccini. I was looking at his biography earlier. He's like a Italian flautist who specializes in new music. He does repertoire for piccolo, flute, alto flute, bass flute, lots of solo stuff. So kind of the perfect candidate for a commission like this. The work was supported by this grant, I guess, from the Fondo Estatal para la Cultura y las Artes de Quintana, ROO, and there's these performance notes, mostly about how to set up the tech and like add reverb to the performer, diffuse the performer, diffuse the electronics. The setup makes me think it's fixed media, not live electronics, because there's a click track which has to come from the mixer. Also, the microphones are going straight into the mixer. They're not going into any kind of patch, so you're just diffusing the live sound with the recorded sound, or the fixed media, I should say. Uh, Interestingly, there's a dedicated performance CPU off to the side rather than on stage, but it's cued from on stage. And then there's a couple like monitors and screens for the performer. Looks like the original performance, it was like in quad like this. You can see the speakers 3 and 4 at the back of the diagram. And there were two subs, I guess, at the front. So, yeah, pretty interesting diagram. Uh, yeah, so this piece, just listening to it, it ended up having a lot of like key clicks, and the key clicks were kind of separated, like from the air sounds or pitch sounds. So for the most part, the flute is like divided into two staves, one for the air, one for the fingers, which gives a really unique sound. All the stuff goes by really fast. There's a climax on a high note, and then more fast stuff and more long high notes. Um, there's this overtone, like the first big high note moment is this overtone blowing in harmonics. Um, but yeah, you get these long rests where it's just electronics, and then bursts of sound, and the electronic part itself is full of uh flute samples, and it's very busy and quite noisy actually. So it's just yeah, very a flurry of activity kind of piece. One other interesting thing I found was there's 2 minutes of just electronics at the end, and also a minute or more of electronics at the beginning. So the performer is kind of just sitting in the middle of this very extreme soundscape. I like sort of how things start to settle down towards the end in the electronics part. It does feel a little bit old-fashioned, like I think if I saw this at a computer music conference now, it would fit in for sure, but it would probably be the most modernist, virtuosic thing in the concert, and probably for very little reason, like it doesn't. I still see a lot of composers doing this stuff right now, especially not with fixed media. Maybe someone would be trying to get this sound with live electronics, and that's their whole practice, but yeah, I don't see a lot of fixed media stuff like this nowadays, so um, kind of an interesting piece of contemporary music. Today I'm listening to miniatures from Phoenicia by Lebanese composer Sami Seif. It's a solo flute piece which was written in 2020 and it's dedicated to Mary Kay Fink. I saw this piece performed live at the University of Chicago in 2023, and I think I shared a concert with the piece, so that's how I got a hold of the score. It's a pretty long flute piece, like 9 minutes, and I think the performer was Paul Novak. Yeah, that would make the most sense. Three movements. We got program note and some performance notes, and then we get right into the piece. So movement one is called vowels. Movement two, plosives. And movement three is called fricatives and sibilances. So, um, yeah, Phoenicia referring to phonetics and like the categorization of different sounds you can make with your mouth. So around 1050 BC, the Phoenicians invented the very first writing system based on phonetics. Spread by Phoenician merchants across the Mediterranean world, it evolved and was assimilated by many other cultures and became the foundation for the Roman alphabet used by Western civilization, as well as all other alphabetic writing systems currently in use. Miniatures from Phoenicia intersects my curiosity about linguistics with my interest in the history of my ancestors, the Phoenicians. The music of Phoenicia has been lost. With this piece, however, I invite the audience to reimagine what it might have sounded like. The language of the music is constructed with the help of small cells that form recursive patterns mimicking the recursive nature of Semitic languages. Dedicated to Mary Kay Fink, who so generously helped me and without whom this piece would not exist in its current form. I'm assuming this is either a commissioner or a flautist, but we'll just do a bit of research in a sec here. Miniatures from Phoenicia was awarded first prize for the 2021 Ohio Federation of Music Clubs Collegiate Composition Contest. In that same year, it also won the Warren County Summer Music School's Promising Young Composers Competition and the Arizona Flute Society's Composers Competition, where it won second prize at the Vienna Academy Music International Music Competition and third prize at the Cleveland Composers Guild Contest, also 2021 for both of those. A little bit about Sami Seif. He's a music theorist and composer. He's worked with numerous renowned musicians, including Mary Kay Fink, Stanley Konopka, Carl Rees, Josh Modney, Marcelo Leniger. He's worked with ensembles such as the TAC Ensemble, Kalamazoo Symphony Orchestra, Tempo Ensemble, etc. Been recognized internationally by ASCAP, SOCAN. Oh, that's interesting. SOCAN. The Society for New Music, the Red Note New Music Festival, and the Metropolitan Youth Orchestra of New York. The New York Composers Circle, the Foundation for Modern Music, the Ohio Federation of Music Clubs, Cleveland Composers Guild, and others. When did he encounter Canada? Originally from the mountain town of Ashkaut in Lebanon, Seif was born in Abu Dhabi to a non-musical family, earned his BM at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and where was his master's? Master's unclear, but currently a doctoral fellow at CUNY. Not sure how up to date that is. Okay, lots of solo slash chamber works, mostly in the 5 minute to 10 minute range, and then a pretty substantial harp concerto, and yeah, another concerto-like large ensemble piece, and one fixed media piece, which can be in 2, 4, or 5.1 channels. Okay, I don't think it's worth going over the performance notes today. Pretty standard stuff. We got microtonal things with fingerings and air sounds and pretty standard things. So, and he has a mix of like conventionally notated rhythms and then like uh, measures that are a number of seconds. Um, so yeah, kind of first movement looks kind of improvised. Actually, they all do kind of have this improvisatory thing going on. So maybe that's why it can run upwards of 8 minutes, 9 minutes. Oh yeah, we have to figure out who this flautist is. Mary Kay Fink joined the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra as piccoloist in 1990 and has appeared as a soloist with the orchestra on numerous occasions. Won the first prize in the National Flute Association Young Artist Competition in 1986. Currently on the board of the National Flute Association. She's also studied Baroque flute and Chinese bamboo flute. We got BM from Oberlin, Masters from the Juilliard, and teachers include Willoughby, Robison, Baker, Robert Cole, Keith Underwood, Sandra Miller, and Robert Dick. Only really familiar with Robert Dick of all of these, but yeah, and pretty big career in academia actually. So yeah, let's have a listen to this thing. I think there's a score follower video, so that's what I'm gonna link today. Okay, so I hope you all took the time to listen to this one. It seems to be a pretty popular video. Um, I think it kind of invents its own little performance practice almost for the flute, and there's like recurring things that happen, like this tremolo where the F on the bottom is glissing up and down. That seems to come back. So there's like specific little things that seem to be super idiomatic for the flute, and yeah, certain microtonal pitches like come up again here and there, and yeah, I think it really effectively sort of transforms the sound of the flute away from modern Western orchestral instrument towards something a little bit more maybe ancient and from an unknown origin, It's kind of interesting. Like I didn't really read the program note when I first heard this piece, so I wasn't really thinking of it as like a imagined culture, like a imagined cultural object. Um, but yeah, it's kind of an interesting idea, like because it's also Sami's like heritage, but it's like an imagined heritage because it's so far back. There's no evidence of a music, so yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah, it's also a piece of like New York history. Today I'm listening to Emmanuel Ontiveros's Zoom for flute. Um, Never heard of this composer before. Don't even think I've ever listened to this piece, honestly. Which is kind of exciting for the channel because I've gone through a lot of repeats on composers. It's not every series lately where I actually get a new composer. So, yeah, this is kind of exciting to explore. I'm assuming it's a Mexican composer, commissioned for the Festival Internacional de Art Contemporáneo de León, so the International Contemporary Arts Festival of León. And we got quite a few pages of performance notes, and that's it. Okay, so that's probably why I haven't listened to it before. I don't actually have the score, but we can look at the performance notes together, I guess. This thing is from 2008. Maybe, no, I don't think I have any other PDFs associated with it, so. Okay, so we got non vibrato, molto vibrato, ordinaro, and bisbigliando, all with abbreviations. Um, and then the bisbigliando has a symbol for the open and closed tone hole. And so it's like a timbral trill, basically. Then we got a jet whistle indication, JW, and a tongue ram indication, TR. Those have like notational things associated with them. Harmonics, diamond note head on the fingered pitch, I guess, and a regular note head for the sounding pitch. Square note heads, okay. In brackets it says a Aeolian, so I'm guessing this is air sounds. Square note head. Key slaps are indicated with X note heads. Arrows can transition from one timbre to another. Similarly, the slow like gradual opening and closing of a tone hole to change the timbre. And yeah, he tends to do that with repeated notes, it looks like. So yeah, maybe the key clicking is given its own staff or something. Yeah. So like for example, this little excerpt at the bottom, we have like air sounds on a low C, but the upper staff is indicating that there's this like bisbigliando thing going on. And occasionally it changes pitch, to the E or the G. Um, Here we have singing and playing. So there's a separate staff for the voice, which is going to be below the flute, singing a high B or playing a high B natural, singing an octave lower, and glissing down an octave. So those are the types of things we're going to hear in the piece. Um, Let me look up the composer. Guanajuato, Mexico. No bio on there. Instagram seems to just promote concerts mostly and concert series, and yet to find a personal website. On Rate Your Music, they have one album, Noises from Mexico. So yeah, I guess this episode is kind of shrouded in mystery a little bit. If you know anything about this composer, please let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to know. Link to this recording is in the video description. The performer here is Salvador Torre. This was a performance at New Music Forum in 2010, which would have been 2 years after the piece was composed. So, yeah, let's have a listen. It's pretty long, actually. It's like 11 minutes. We'll see what I can discern without the score. Um, yeah, going to be a bit of a different reaction today because I won't be able to point to anything in the score that I like or dislike. So, it might be more vibes based. Okay, so my thoughts on this. Um, I thought it was a really interesting piece. There's like definitely this element of flute amplification, and there's also moments where the flute sound is diffused around the space, and like there's some sort of delay effect on it. I'm not sure how that works, if it's pre-recorded or if it's cued by certain bursts of sound or something. But yeah, it was very drony, but like emphasizing the semitone between two notes, which I thought was really good. It kept it simple, but it gave it this sort of like modernist, um, like I don't know. There's that dissonance there that kept the piece going, right? There's like this energy to that dissonance of the minor second. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I also liked how it kind of progressed from one technique to another. There were like definite key click moments, air sound moments, moments with just like drones and ordinary playing. Um, and yeah, it almost felt like variations on a common theme or something. Like each section was pretty well proportioned. So yeah, I thought it was cool. It's not every day you hear an 11-minute flute piece, and obviously it's a little bit um, like the whole drone thing is a little bit reminiscent of like the Berio oboe sequenza, but I thought it was pretty effective, pretty cool. So yeah, it's a real shame I didn't have the score to look at because it's really an interesting piece just based on this performance. Yeah, not sure what it'll be tomorrow because these scores are a bit hit and miss. Either, I mean, there's definitely a recording to this piece by Tomoko Fukui, so it might be that. Or if I can find a recording, there's this solo flute piece by Eva-Maria Houben, which might be nice. That would be our second Houben episode if we do that. So yeah, until tomorrow, thank you for listening along with me. Super excited to keep the flute train going. Flute is pretty great in terms of repertoire, you know, just solo flute is always, there's just a ton of great stuff. So, yeah, lots to explore here. Today's piece is A Color Song on B by Tomoko Fukui. This is a solo flute piece which was written in the early 2000s. I forget the exact year. Um, this thing is a bit of a hidden gem, you know, like I knew nothing about this composer and I somehow came upon this score. Um, and there's like one live recording on YouTube. It's not a bad score to pull out of your pocket. Like I remember I had to write this solo flute piece very quickly, and I stole some of the techniques from this. And my composition teacher at the time was like wondering where I got my ideas, and I showed them this piece. They thought the piece was cool. Admittedly, you know, some of the techniques my performer at the time did not pull off or figure out. So, um, you know, that's why my teacher needed the extra bit of explanation. But Yeah, what's interesting about this piece is it sort of is centered around this drone on a B in the middle of the treble clef. So it has a very, obvious compositional device going on throughout it. But all kinds of things happen. There's some really interesting like difference tones that happen from like singing while playing towards the end here, and it ends pretty high. So it's sort of just like ramping up energy all the way through. Um, Here's some of the extended techniques. So numbers above each note mean fingerings. So I guess it's like not specific fingerings, but oh yeah, no, it is specified. So yeah, there'll be like a little legend that tells you the two different fingerings and then the numbers just to indicate them. So timbral trail kind of thing. That characterizes the start of the piece. There's some uh, key percussion. So yeah, I guess they're regardless of whether it's tongued or not, it's an X note head. Tongue ram. The notation here has diamond note head for the fingered pitch, and then a triangle note head for the sounding pitch. The note head for air sounds in this one is the downward facing triangle. And then what I was describing before, the difference tone stuff. Here they are notating not only the sung pitch, but also the difference tone that you should hear while you're singing. Um, so that's kind of interesting. It's like the pitch you're blowing into the flute stays the same, and then the note you're singing is you're glissing up and down. Then we got naturals with arrows for our quarter tone accidentals, and I guess inhale sounds is just the upward arrow note head. Um, yeah, so I guess lots of not only singing and playing, but inhaling while playing. Also, the PDF I have seems to be signed by the composer. I don't know if this is an actual signature or if that's just printed on every score. Okay, so yeah, there's a bunch of other color songs in her uh, published works, I guess. This is just what I'm seeing in some old performance listings. Yeah, so Fukui has been commissioned by the Venice Biennale, Darmstadt International Freien Kurs. Yeah, so the Darmstadt course for new music. Festival New Music Stuttgart, couple international music festivals in Japan. Her music's been performed at the World Music Days in Hong Kong, Zagreb, Slovakia, and Austria. She organized the ensemble Next Mushroom Promotion, which mostly plays contemporary music. I'm assuming in 2000 something, because in 2005 that ensemble won a prize. Uh, so yeah, they hold a interesting concert in Japan each year. That ensemble has invited variously Helmut Lockenmann, Matthias Spangler, Francesco Filide, Stefan Prinz, and others. So, in 2018, she was the first Asian woman to be elected to the board of the ISCM, which has 100 years history. International Society of Contemporary Music, for those who don't know. And yeah, she's based in Tokyo. So, pretty dated materials online. A lot of this seems to be from the 2010s. But it's interesting that she has kind of continued to not only compose but like curate and promote contemporary music in Japan. Next Mushroom Promotion was founded in 2001, as it turns out. Uh, Founded by Motoharu Kawashima and Nozomi Ueda and Tomoko Fukui. I think she's the main founder of it. They also promote new works by Japanese composers, including works by Toshio Hosokawa, Tomoko Fukui, and they've also done some Conlon Nancaro and Julio Estrada. The name is a reference and homage to the work of John Cage, Cage being an important musical philosopher and also a mushroom expert. Maybe not, what is the word? Not a mycologist, but something adjacent to that. Glad to be featuring this composer. And let's listen to this thing. Link in the video description, as always. Haven't listened to it in maybe 5-6 years, so it's worth refreshing my memory here. Okay, yeah, so this is really fun one. Obviously, very dramatic piece. I love the use of silences and sort of like division of the piece into these sections. Um, the different tone stuff is really fun. And I'd be curious to hear this with like a high voice because obviously this performer was doing all the singing stuff an octave lower, but the very opening it's like supposed to be a unison. So I feel like that might be very different sounding. So yeah, kind of interesting. Really good use of like extreme registers and different registers of the flute, and I think it gives the performer a lot of liberties to go extreme and fake things if they need to fake them. There's like really interesting use of extreme dynamics. I think you have like staying at triple forte here, for example, and then like sforzandi and accents, right? It's like pretty hard not to go for it when the composer is giving you all that, right? I think there's 5 Fs at one point or something. It seems to stay at 4 Fs for a long time. Maybe there's no 5 Fs, but you kind of have to give, like, having worked with flautists, you kind of have to give them stuff like that to push them to go outside of their normal classical, like, ideas of tone and beauty and stuff, right? You got to give them permission, and I feel like dynamics and articulation really go hand in hand with extended techniques, like they really enforce them. So this is a really great example of that, I think. Super interesting thing to study if you're trying to find inspiration for a solo flute piece, I think. Definitely an inspirational piece for me. And it's nice and short, 7 minutes. So, yeah, really cool. Now that I'm thinking about it, like, so this one person gave me a bunch of Mexican scores, and may have given me this score because the performer of this piece is Mexican, and they're seemingly the only performer of this online. And they are the same performer who did the piece we listened to yesterday by Emmanuel Ontiveros, who's a Mexican composer. And also, I think when I was reading into Tomoko's bio here, their ensemble, that mushroom ensemble, played at a pretty notable festival in Mexico. I can't remember exactly, but so there's this sort of like, yes, this is a Japanese composer, but I probably got this score along with all of my Mexican composer scores. So I think that's kind of interesting. Maybe it'll make a splash in Europe or the US or something. Uh, and people just don't know about this piece enough, right? Outside of Mexico or Japan. Um, so yeah, hopefully I'm helping to get the word out. All right, so today's piece is Five Soliloquies by Andra Delora May. She wrote these things back in 1993. This is the 1994 version of the same piece, and she wrote these for flautist Elizabeth McNutt. Both Andra and Elizabeth taught at the University of North Texas, where I did my doctorate. Andra taught me Max MSP, or like intro to Max MSP, and also was my boss when I worked for the Center for Experimental Music and Intermedia. And then Elizabeth, I didn't really take any classes with her, but she um, did direct the new music ensemble Nova, so I participated in some of their reading sessions and things. Yeah, so this piece I was already looking at it yesterday. This is sort of like a revised video. So I won't be doing the whole like pre-listen, post-listen. I think I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. It's in 5 movements, which are mostly a page long, though the 5th movement is 2 pages long, and they're titled Excited but Restrained for movement 1, for soliloquy 1, Languorous for soliloquy 2, Incoherent for 3, Meditative for 4, Agitated for 5. And there's a little note here that they were composed in Santa Clarita and La Jolla, California. I think this is when Andra was doing their doctorate at UCSD, because I know that she was director of Sami from 2005 to something, so I'm assuming she started teaching at UNT around 2005. You can see it's a handwritten score. It's really nice looking in that respect, and it has a pretty detailed set of performance notes here. There's a little legend here of the different symbols. So air tone, uh, key slaps, also tongue pizzicato, which is always with the key slap as well. Tongue ram looks pretty similar to other tongue ram notations we've seen. And then the harmonic notation is kind of like fingered pitch as a diamond note head. Um, Usually I see this, but without the diamond note head in brackets. It's just extra bit of notation. And then the 4th movement, I should say, the meditative one, is in a time signature of 0, so it's proportionally notated. And the shorter notes do have a filled-in note head, just to sort of like break things up. There's also 2 different rests in that movement. Andra decides here to like use the caesura to distinguish fermatas and shorter rests. So, what else do I want to say about Andra? She is best known for her work for solo instrument and live electronics, and I think she was pretty early into that. When maybe I'll pull up a piece title of one of her earliest essays in that. And she also, along with Elizabeth McNutt, for the longest time, she was co-directing this new music series called Sounds Modern, which ran out of Fort Worth, Texas. University of North Texas is very close by in Denton. Oh yeah, and also I should mention that Andra is a violinist. So yeah, this piece, I was just listening to it. My favorite movement is probably the 3rd. I like the contrast between the 2nd and 3rd movement. And then the multiphonic stuff in the 4th movement is really cool, so I would listen for that. I'm not sure if you can still download this score off of Andra's website, but that's where I got it. And unfortunately, her website's a little bit outdated right now, but the only recording is an embedded recording in her website, so that's where the link is today. It's about runs about 7 minutes long, and 2 of those minutes are just this fourth movement, maybe even more. So it kind of is interesting proportion wise. And yeah, it's just very like pointillistic, modernist, extreme uses of dynamics. And generally, I think it looks really fun to play. I'm not a flautist myself, but it looks like there's a lot to chew on in every page. So uh, yeah, that's it. That's the piece for today. Today's piece is Canto alba by Mario Lavista, which is a solo flute piece from 1980. Looks to be about 5 pages, landscape like this. Oh no, it's sort of like it's cut off in the middle, but they're like much wider actually. So these 2 pages are kind of like the same thing. Maybe if I do this, right, you can kind of see this is one page, and then this is the second page. And then you have some performance notes on the back. So why don't we start there? Dawn Song for amplified flute to be performed on an open hole flute with a B foot. There's 2 symbols for quarter tone accidentals, quarter tone sharp, quarter tone flat. There's the breath mark is used to indicate pauses. Approximate durations are indicated with brackets and then a number of seconds. SV is without vibrato. WT is whistle tones. Then, yeah, appoggiaturas. Square note heads are for notes that have a non-traditional fingering. So then the fingering is given. Sung notes are any note with an X through the stem. Natural harmonics, a diamond note head is used to show the fingered pitch, and a regular note head for the sounding pitch. And similar thing with the overblown multiphonics, except multiple sounding pitches are then shown. And then there's glissandi as well, which are like a fingered glissandi. So, or glissando. There is a poem here that accompanies it, and also it's for Marielena Ari. Marielena Arispe, I'm assuming. So this is a flautist. Who doesn't seem to have a lot of documentation online. But yeah, there is a flautist that the piece is dedicated to. And then in terms of the poem, let me just translate this real quick. Okay, so this poem is a Spanish translation of a poem by Wang Wei of the Tang Dynasty. And Wang Wei lived from 699 to 761. Common Era, I guess. In addition to being a poet, he was a musician and a painter and a politician. He's regarded as one of the most distinguished men of arts and letters of his era. About 400 of his poems have survived. 29 of them are included in the 18th century anthology 300 Tang Poems. He is renowned for his dual talents as a nature poet and landscape painter. Only lived to be 62. The Spanish here in the score, sentado solo entre los bambúes, tocó laúd y silbo, 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 nadie me oye en el inmenso bosque, pero la blanca luna me ilumina. And the Google translation, I sit alone among the bamboos, I play the lute and whistle, whistle, whistle. No one hears me in the vast forest, but the white moon illuminates me. So very appropriate poem for a solo flute piece. Um, very evocative. If you are interested in this composer, we actually just did a solo bass flute piece of his at the start of this flute series. So I would go to that episode if you like what you hear today. This piece is a little bit longer than that one. It's like closer to 10 minutes. Link in the video description. And yeah, I look forward to seeing how this one sounds. Okay, so my thoughts on this piece. The pacing was a lot slower than that other piece we looked at, Lamento, and I think that worked in its favor. I like that it really took its time with this opening. It's just a gorgeous section of multiphonics, and um, yeah, I think multiphonics have like this reputation of being needlessly complicated or being noisy, but flute multiphonics obviously are their own beast, and this is a really good example of like using them in a way that's friendly for the performer and gives them uh, means to be expressive with them. And yeah, I thought it was just a really striking opening. I was also thinking while listening to this that this is a really good example of like sort of Orientalism in like very late 20th century music, like 1980s. Solo flute has been associated with the Orient, right? Since Debussy's Syrinx or whatever, which we will get to eventually. But this is like 50 years after that, maybe more, maybe 70 years after that, and still the same like association that people are making. So I think it's interesting this poem from the Tang Dynasty that is translated into Spanish and quoted by this Mexican composer to sort of set the stage for this flute piece. A lot of Lavista's string music that we looked at, he was famous for using like a lot of natural harmonics on strings to get these beautiful textures, and the use of multiphonics here is kind of a similar thing, right? It's very like um, purposeful and it has a very like specific idea of what beautiful is, and it's very appealing. So yeah, I rather like this flute piece. Tomorrow we're gonna look at something else. I think it's a should be a Stockhausen piece. Yeah, there's a Stockhausen piece from 1977. So hopefully that is not an obscure find. It's very easy. And then we got the three really big ones, the Berio Sequenza, Density 21.5, and Syrinx. Okay, so today's piece is In Freundschaft by Karlheinz Stockhausen, which I think was first a piece for clarinet, but today we're looking at the flute version. Yes, so this is believe 1977 is the date I have. So it's like kind of late Stockhausen or like getting there. We're not quite at his opera cycle leaked, but we're getting there, right? It looks like the whoever had this score translated all the German into French in pen here. So yeah, some pretty detailed performance notes directly in the score. And then there's this program note in French, which is just handwritten. Yeah, I'm not sure what this document is, like in what shape this score was when it was scanned. But yeah, it says dedicated to Suzanne Stevens, the clarinetist, for her birthday, I guess, the 28th of July, 1977. It was called In Friendship, for those who don't know. It's his 46th work, and it's a serial composition. Yeah, the clarinet version was written in 1977. And yeah, like I was saying, his third period, which is mainly focused on the composition of Licht, the opera cycle, starts in 1977, right after this piece. So he immediately made the flute version after, like 4 days after the clarinet version. It was premiered by Lucille Goers and Marjorie Shanksky in the flute version. That was for Stephanie's birthday. Or sorry, that was for Stephen's birthday. The premiere of the version for clarinet wasn't until November 1978 by Suzanne Stevens as part of a homage to Messiaen concert in Paris, I think. And the oboe version was premiered by Heinz Holliger in 1979. It was adapted for basset horn with an extended range to C, also in 1979. And then the first authorized bass clarinet performance of it was in 1981. Stockhausen made a version for cello in 1981, which was premiered by Warren Stewart at the Eastman School of Music. Also, there's a violin version. The bassoon version followed in 1982, premiered by Kim Walker. Stockhausen, during the bassoon version premiere, said the piece made him imagine a giant teddy bear playing it, like the one he had as a small child. So Kim Walker premiered the bassoon version dressed as a teddy bear, commissioning a costume for that. It's kind of interesting. Trombone version was requested by Mark Tezak. And this was in 1982. John Sampin requested a version for soprano saxophone, also in 1982. So Stockhausen continued to make these. 1983, version for horn was premiered by Alejandro Gouveia Zapino. I guess it was prepared for rehearsals in 1983, but the horn one, further changes were made and it was finalized in 1984 for a premiere by Jens McManama. That was celebrating Pierre Boulez's 60th birthday. So the piece has like this association with, I guess, childhood nostalgia, like the teddy bear thing, but it also has this like attachment to like birthday concerts. So I think that's kind of interesting. A version for alto recorder was made in 1984 for Guiche Gedert. The cello version has also been played by double bass. There's also a version for tuba based on the cello version. His son Marcus gave the trumpet version premiere on a trumpet in E flat in 1997. So that's the latest one. Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a ton of albums that this piece is on. Kind of like another piece from this time that we looked at, the Zodiac pieces by Stockhausen, which have even more versions, right? There's like all kinds of instrumentations for that. The original was like clarinet and piano or something. I can't remember. Link in the video description to the recording, and I guess I'll see you in however long this one takes. Okay, it's actually quite long, typically running between 10 and 15 minutes. Hey, yeah, so I guess I didn't do my research that well. I didn't realize the piece had a lot of movement. So it makes sense. Suzanne Stevens, the clarinetist, who the first version was dedicated to, she also premiered his work Harlequin, which is a much larger, more physically intense, like solo clarinet piece. This is more of a nice little show piece. I liked a lot of the movements for flute, and I understand why Stockhausen had to take care to authorize one version after another because the instruments have a different physicality, so you'd have to like come up with different movements and choreography for each version. So I think it'd be kind of cool to maybe do a study on all the different versions and what Stockhausen did from a choreographer's perspective. Um, yeah, the opening is really the most like um, distinctive part of the piece. This like tick tock back and forth between two notes, um, then like adding different gestures in and speeding it up. That's a very simple idea, but very striking and really useful if you want to start introducing movement, having simple ideas like that. Yeah, that was an interesting one. I definitely didn't know what to expect today with Stockhausen, right? But it was a really interesting piece and definitely one that I think more flautists should play, if anything, just to like have the experience of like doing a piece with a lot of movement and uh, figuring out how to play your instrument um, musically and with all your classical training and technique, but like also basically doing dance work at the same time. Okay, so today we're looking at the Berio sequenza for flute. This is the first sequenza. Berio sequenzas are a series of virtuosic solo instrument pieces. They're often, I mean, they're usually very long and also virtuosic, and they tend to play with like theatrics a little bit. Like, for example, the harp sequenza, the music sounds unlike anything you'd expect from a harp. The trombone sequenza, the performer is supposed to be like in clown makeup, and it's inspired by a clown. Um, the first one is the flute sequenza, I think from 1958. And the big thing about this one that people tend to write about is that it's in proportional notation. But I think there's also a version that is in standard notation, so you can kind of compare the two. But yeah, the original is proportional, so it's like where the notes line up on the each line, you're expected to just play them. Um, like this amount of horizontal space is supposed to be one beat at beat equals 70, right? So I think it's like, yeah, there's like 7 beats ish per line. And of course, it gets to points where it slows down because you have fermatas, right? So the beat gets longer, but in those sections, the time is the same, right? So it's like you have to then stretch those measures out. This is why in your notation software you have like you might have the option for ticks instead of actual bar lines. I think this is the first piece to really use the tick notation. I guess it's part of this collection of pieces by Berio, offered by the same publisher, Suvini Zerboni. Um, can't say I'm familiar with all of these. There's, I think there's also uh, a series of pieces for soloist and ensemble based on each sequenza. I'm not sure if they're called his serenadas or something. Another really famous sequenza is the third one for voice because he wrote that for his wife, Kathy Berberian. And that one has a lot of, it expects the singer to like do a lot of different vocal sounds, pretty much anything you could think of, spliced together. So, yeah, so the second one is for harp. Third one's for voice, as I was saying. Fourth one's for piano. The fifth one is the trombone. Six is viola. That one starts with the like all four strings tremolo really loud for a long time. Sequenza 7 is for oboe. There's also a version of that one for soprano sax. The oboe one's famous because it has a drone as well. So there's technically like electronics, but it's just like a drone note. You could even use I think I've seen someone play it with like just a metronome with the tuning notes. You know. Sequenza 8 is for violin. I forget how that one goes. 9 is clarinet, also reworked for alto saxophone and bass clarinet. Then Sequenza 10 is kind of interesting. It's for trumpet, but there's also piano resonance, so you have to, like, I guess, have someone sitting at a piano on stage just holding down the pedal, or you could have an onstage piano and maybe weigh the pedal down with a sandbag or something. Sequenza 11 for guitar, I'm pretty familiar with, just because I wrote a piece for solo electric bass in my undergrad, and I was looking at this score a lot. It has a moment in it where the guitarist has to like tune their strings as they're playing because it's so long that the strings actually get out of tune over the course of the piece. So Berio has a way for the guitarist to like tune mid piece. The bassoon one is interesting. It involves circular breathing, so it's like really endurance focused. The accordion one, I don't quite remember it. And then I guess the last one is the cello one, which was reworked for double bass. And believe it or not, I've actually seen all of these live at the University of Toronto, where I did my undergrad. There was a concert of all the sequenzas. I may have seen, like the bass version instead of the cello version, or the alto sax version instead of the clarinet or whatever, but it was at least one version of each one, the whole series. And I mean, I think it has made a lasting impact on me as a composer. I still mainly write for solo instrument and don't see any problem with that, partly because like I think these pieces are so amazing. We have the Kemen series. That's what I was thinking of earlier. The Kemen series is basically taking a soloist and then adding parts to it. So it's like the sequenza becomes a basis for the other piece. I guess sequenza 1 did not become a Kemen's piece, so this flute and this thing for flute and 14 instruments is just a standalone piece. It doesn't have anything to do with the sequenza. But the Kemen's series does not get performed nearly as much as the sequenzas. That is your introduction. We have another Berio episode on the channel. I did 3 movements of Berio's Sinfonia. So if you would like to know more about the composer, I cover his biography in that episode. And it should be timestamped if you just want to go straight to the bio. But yeah, with that being said, let's listen to Sequenza 1, where it all started, and I will let you know my thoughts. A link to a recording is in the video description, as always. Okay, yeah. So it is really good. I'm definitely noticing some things on this listen that I hadn't in the past, like this motive of the long note that just like diminuendos and then the short up, up note that punctuates the piece throughout. There's this interesting like use of all different sizes of duration. You get like even some really long notes towards the end here. Interesting like little introduction of multiphonics just to like add something at that moment, and then like when you first get the repeated notes, right, that working its way towards flutter tonguing, and then flutter tonguing being a real major part of the piece. It shows this sort of like interest in extended techniques, which come to dominate the other Berio sequenzas, and like sort of these different techniques kind of like dominating different parts of the piece, becoming its own musical idea. without being like totally Lockenman or anything, just like still using extended techniques as a real tool. It's the kind of thing though where you can imagine, yeah, it might sound very similar if it was just notated conventionally. Like how much does it actually add having this proportional notation stuff? But for 1958, I think that's a very original and interesting thing to do. So, yeah, that's the sequenza number one. Tomorrow we're looking at some Varese. It might be our first Varese episode, actually.
Okay, so today's piece is Density 21.5 by Edgard Varese, a very famous flute piece from the 1930s, written in 1936 at the request of Georges Barrère, for the inauguration of his platinum flute, revised April 1946. 21.5, of course, is the density of the element platinum. I was given this score at a composer workshop or something. You're looking at a lot of flute stuff. It's just 2 pages. Edgar Varese is, of course, famous futurist composer, not just a modernist, who spent a lot of time trying to write his pieces. I think he has a very small output of pieces. If you listen to his early orchestral stuff, like Emeric, it sounds like The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, but kind of on steroids. And he just kind of went with that. Like he tried to like pursue that kind of primitivist almost thing further and further. And this was quite a ways into that style, I think. Um, what would his late stuff be like? Désert, maybe. Uh, he also is famous for this piece of electronic music, which merged like tape music techniques and like like what I'm saying is like both synthesized sounds and music concrete. That piece is called Poème Electronique, and it was for an installation. So there's that influence as well of electronic music. Um, Perez was born in 1883 and died in 1965. As a French-American avant-garde composer, he coined the term organized sound in reference to his own musical aesthetic. Um, Conceived of the idea of like sound mass composition, which of course became very influential. Like he made his American premiere conducting Berlioz' piece, um, the Grand Mas de Mort. Uh, yeah, Amaryk's, which I mentioned before, is 1921, whereas this flute piece is quite late, 1936. During the 20s and 30s, some of his principal creative activities were two ambitious projects which were never realized. One was a large-scale work, typically called The Astronomer, based on Native American legends. Later, it became a futuristic drama. His other big piece was a choral symphony simply titled Espace. That's also unfinished. And yeah, his late recognition was with the Poème Electronique I was talking about at the Phillips Pavilion. Very influenced by medieval and Renaissance music, as well as the music of Scriabin, Debussy, and of course Berlioz and Strauss. Like I said before, I think the most clear influence is like Stravinsky's early ballets. Yeah, had a huge influence on modernist composers, obviously. So yeah, link to this in the video description. This might be our only Verez episode, so I guess hopefully I'll get you enough of an introduction to his work. It's a very small catalog, and all of these pieces are very influential. Yeah, 15 pieces. I'm like hardly anything, so definitely check some of these out. Nice, yeah. Unfortunately, this is a banger. Yeah, it's still really hits. I kind of forgot how it went, but it was that first Ide Fixe like melody thing. It just I immediately remembered the whole piece. So it all was very nostalgic today, I think. Um, I think it's remarkable what he's able to do with rhythm, just working with one, two, or three pitches, usually two or three pitches. And then, yeah, I think sound mass is a good way to kind of conceptualize these different harmonic areas that the piece explores. It's nice and short, and it uses the high register of the flute in a really interesting way. Like, really breaks up the instrument into its different registers. So I think, yeah, it's really cool. It doesn't sound like particularly contemporary. It sounds pretty old still, but definitely ahead of Debussy, and it's like not quite romantic sounding. It's definitely more unique than that. So yeah, it's like not quite atonal either. So um, yeah, I can see why it would be a very influential piece and why Verez's style would be very influential to composers. Because it's all kind of quite intuitive, I think. So speaking of Debussy, tomorrow we're going to be looking at Syrinx, which no doubt inspired this piece, uh, which is about 20 years older, 22 years older than this. Okay, so today I'm talking about a classic piece of solo flute repertoire, Syrinx by Claude Debussy from 1913. So, yeah, this is sort of like the first big solo flute piece for like written for the modern flute, the Bohm system, keyed flute. There's not a lot of solo flute repertoire before this, not in the way that string instruments have solo repertoire. I mean, there is a CPE Bach piece, I believe, but uh, you know, typically wind instruments were accompanied in any sort of solo capacity, right? So 1913 is when people start to take solo flute seriously, and um, most of the solo flute repertoire is after this, right? Firmly after 1913. I believe that Syrinx, the mythical figure, is the love interest of Pan, obviously, the flautist figure in Greek mythology. This piece is dedicated to Louis Fleury, a French flautist who died in 1926. I guess they premiered it, I'm assuming. It was originally written as some incidental music for a play and was played off stage. The original title was Flute de Pan. What is Pan the god of? So Syrinx is a nymph. Pan is the god of the wild, shepherds, flocks, rustic music, and impromptus. Yeah, there's some sort of association here with like the pastoral, I guess, but also the this idea of antiquity and what antique music might sound like. This piece is also a standard in the saxophone literature, probably not by the composer's design. And yeah, I'm sure it's popular on other instruments as well. It's just 2 pages and it's about 3 minutes. So why don't we listen to it together? Um, yeah, not sure if this qualifies as contemporary music, but it's important to think about it in the context of all this other solo flute stuff we've been listening to, I think. And um, yeah, this is also our second Debussy episode. So you're really if it so interests you, whatever my thoughts are on Debussy, there's another episode on one of his piano pieces that you can go to. And I don't know the episode number offhand, but it's there. And yeah, I'll see you in 3 minutes. Yeah, I listened to the Berlin Philharmonic performance here by Andreas Blau. I'm trying to think of what the context would be. I think this would be really interesting to hear alongside some of Debussy's orchestra pieces, um, especially from stuff from around the same time. It's yeah, it sounds very orchestral, like an orchestra solo almost, just like a little bit longer than your typical orchestra solo. You can kind of imagine the rich harmonies that could accompany it, right? It doesn't sound very atonal. Like we looked at the Verez yesterday, that doesn't sound like it needs any kind of accompaniment, right? It it sounds like a solo piece. This sounds like, you know, there was a choice to leave out the accompaniment or whatever. I really like how it uses the middle and low register of the flute and then saves the really high stuff for a couple specific moments. I think it really is kind of like textbook, like orchestral flute writing. I think a composer could learn a lot about the flute just from studying this score. It definitely is long enough that it is like a standalone piece, but I can also see how it's used in the context of a play. I would have thought maybe it could even work in an opera or something as an interlude or something. Because I think in Tristan and Isolde, there's like that huge English horn solo. Um, Kind of reminded me of that. I think tomorrow we're moving on to the pieces for flute and electronics. Uh, might be a piece by an old colleague of mine at the University of North Texas. Depends on if I can find a recording for that. But I have three pieces up next for flute and electronics, and then I think I have three or four pieces for piccolo after that. Okay, so today I'm listening to a piece by American composer Aleyna Neivandt-Brown for flute and electronics. It's called Recitation. And Aleyna was a colleague of mine at the University of North Texas. She wrote this back in 2017 during one of her bachelor's degrees at Florida State University. The piece requires a max patch and access to a metronome click, which is just to count the flautist in, or I guess and during. Suggestion: wireless headphones connected to a smartphone. I think that you could probably work that into the patch, but anyways. The patch is just a simple two-part delay and reverb, adjustable for the performance space. I'm assuming just the reverb is adjustable. And the flautist must perform into a microphone, obviously, so that the sound can be captured. And there's a little bit of instructions here on how to work the patch. The notation shows that, yeah, the recorded sound is delayed by 6 beats or 6 seconds, and then an additional 6 seconds, but it's just the two. And yeah, it looks like it's a delay piece primarily. Quarter equals 60. That's what you're going to be hearing in the click. And it's quite short. It's just like 70 something measures. Here's what the patch looks like. Looks like you have quite a few controls for the reverb, room size, decay time, high frequency damping, and diffusion. And then I guess this volume is for the this is like the output sound maybe, or the input sound volume. And oh yeah, if you open up the patch, it's quite simple. Using some tap in and tap outs and load messes. So literally just delay lines and some fade gates. Yeah, there's the easy DAC, easy DAC instead of the normal ones. And she built her own reverb for this, or maybe took it from somewhere. It's a plate reverb. That's kind of nice. Maybe this is Randy Jones's reverb. Some stuff about Aleyna. Let's see what she's up to lately. She's now based in Dallas, Texas, which isn't very far from Denton, where the two of us studied. And she's now a professor, not sure at which school. She's a full-time professor of commercial music at Dallas College, primarily teaching audio engineering and recording technology. She's an avid certified Pro Tools instructor. She has an independent music publishing company called Red Pin Publishing, which also doubles as a music production company, Red Pin Productions. She had three bachelors. I guess one bachelor in commercial music, minoring in business, and then two bachelors in music in composition and flute performance. Uh, I wonder if she did all three of these at the same time, or if it was like two concurrent bachelors. Uh, and then I guess she technically did two master's degrees at UNT in both flute performance and in composition. I think this website is not as up to date as her Red Pin Publishing website. Because, yeah, the newest stuff on here is like 2022. Not a huge list of works. Maybe this is just a select few. I remember her um, master's thesis project was like a combination of pieces. There was like a dance collaboration piece she wrote with a choreographer that was performed a couple times in one performance space at UNT. And then at the same time, she had like, it was like a short little recital. There was also like a harp and electronics piece on it or something. Oh wait, here is the thesis. Femininity, ownership, and power, multimedia exhibition. Data on the gender gap. Data on the gender gap in electroacoustic music. On the committee was Andra Delora May, who we talked about a few episodes ago. David Stout, who was the chair. Dr. McNutt, flute instructor, and Jennifer Way, who was, I guess, the non-College of Music or non-composition area representative from the College of Visual Arts and Design. Oh yeah, yeah, it's kind of coming back to me now. She had like the dance stuff, but also a solo viola piece, which was pretty significant that Amanda played. And then she might have had like a flute, harp, and viola trio or something like that. I know she has a solo harp piece, so that was probably in it. Can't remember if I don't think there was a choir, but she had a piece with recorded voices for sure. Maybe I should have taken the time to read through this before the episode, but we gotta keep moving on. Uh, Listening to a different piece every day here. So, anyways, link to a recording of this is in the video description. I encourage you to listen to recitation with me, and it's a short one today. It's just 4 minutes, so if you made it this far into the video, I think you can handle listening to this with me. So, yeah, I think this is a really high quality recording. Immediately when I started listening to this, I thought like, oh, this would be really cool if the two delayed versions were like kind of panned fairly far left and right, so that you got this effect of like a flute trio playing. Um, I think it could also work really well for flute trio, but um, yeah, I think this is a really interesting score for flautists, especially flautists who want to get into live electronics. It's like a very straightforward patch. It's obvious from the score what the patch does, and it having to play with a click and like have your sound like delayed and like I feel like that experience is really important for flautists who maybe only know how to play acoustically, right? So I think pedagogically this could be really useful and really fun, honestly. It looks very idiomatic and fun to play. And I assume Aleyna like improvised a lot of this stuff, you know, and crafted something that she wanted to play. So, yeah, it's a pretty cool piece. I'm kind of surprised that I haven't taken the time to listen to it before. It's just a very nice standalone piece that I guess I wasn't familiar with. I know a lot of my listeners are composers, but hopefully a flautist stumbles upon this flute series and maybe is interested in this piece. Yeah, it's nice to remind myself of Aleyna's music and catch up on what she's been up to. I wish her all the best in Dallas. I know that uh, academia is not uh, doing so well in Texas. You know, it's like a very challenging time politically, uh, and I believe that Texas got rid of all tenure track positions and stuff. So I hope she can make a good go of this college teaching and stuff. Tomorrow, I think we're going to listen to a piece by Panayiotis Kokoras, and the third piece for flute and electronics. Of course, we're going to listen to the Kaija Saariaho. So, yeah, that'll be a good trio of pieces.
Okay, so today's piece is Mosaicing by Panayiotis Kokoras for flute and electronics. I believe it was written in 2016 or so, and it's not really one that I'm familiar with. Um, Kokoras, of course, was one of my teachers when I studied at the University of North Texas. So today's a nice opportunity to revisit some of his music, remind myself why I went to UNT in the first place, and maybe read up on his biography a little bit, share who he is with y'all. He's most famous for his acousmatic work and his work for instrument and electronics. Um, Also, as you'll see in this score, he tends to include the spectrogram of whatever fixed media in the score itself. So, although a lot of his pieces sound like live electronics, I think primarily he focuses on uh, fixed media works that are just very integrated with the live sound. So, this piece was written for Elizabeth McNutt, who is a flute professor also at the University of North Texas. I guess it was written in Denton, and it runs about 7.5 minutes. Yeah, right from the start, we have a lot of extended techniques, these sort of glissandi. They're instructed to tune with the tape, I guess. Surprisingly, not a lot of performance notes before the score. It's all just kind of in the score itself. This sort of practice of including the spectrogram, I think Kokoras has borrowed it from his work doing live diffusion of acousmatic work, where often as a you know person diffusing, or usually you'd be diffusing your own music as a composer, you'd like look at the spectrogram of your piece and mark it up like it were a score. So that it's sort of lined up so that it aligns with everything going on in the notated music. And you can see some of it is like basically silence, right? And then you have some more like whistle kind of sounds. You can kind of see them also these like masses of sound, which are probably more like clustery and low. Then you have some pure tones here, but like lower register. So there's actually a lot you can gain from looking at it if you're familiar with what spectrograms look like and what sounds look like. Unfortunately, a lot of contemporary performers aren't familiar with that, right? From the looks of it, this might have even been visualized in Spear, which I don't know if I have on my desktop right now, but yeah, it's a free spectrogram kind of visualization software, which is super useful. But yeah, I think that's what he used in this case. So yeah, I guess I should go with his wiki since he has one. He's a Greek composer born in 1974. In both instrumental and electroacoustic writing, his music calls upon a virtuosity of sound, emphasizing the precise production of variable sound possibilities and the correct distinction between one timbre and another. I think that's a pretty fair explanation. His studies started in Athens, guitar and composition. Then in 1999, he moved to England to do postgraduate studies at the University of York. There, he completed his MA and PhD in composition with T. Myatt. This was funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Board and Alexandra Trianti Music Scholarships, among other sources of funding. Yeah, he's had commissions from the Fromm Foundation, IRCAM, MATA, like the MATA Festival in New York, Gaudeamus Festival, ZKM, IMEB. His music's been performed in over 400 concerts around the world, no small feat. Um, and I think recently he got a Guggenheim Fellowship. As I was studying at UNT, he was away for a year to work on that Guggenheim. So, pretty impressive career. I think UNT is very lucky to have him. At UNT, he was director of the Center for Experimental Music and Intermedia for all the years that I studied there, except for, of course, the year where he was um, doing his fellowship. There's a few articles here. I think this needs to be updated a little bit. I guess he was an assistant professor at UNT as of 2012, so that's pretty recent actually. It's like around the same time that I started my undergrad in composition. So it is a fairly long time now that I think about it. But he also taught at the Technological and Educational Institute of Crete and the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. Yeah, he has this concept called holophony, I should mention, where the goal is that each independent sound contributes equally into the synthesis of the total. So it's like this sort of holistic idea, not to be confused with spectral music. It's more like a very literal, like translation of acousmatic ideas. I mean, it is present in his electroacoustic music and also his instrumental music. And it's just like a very, um, yeah, I guess a very idiosyncratic thing. I don't know of a lot of other holophonic composers, but I think it's a good way to describe what he does for sure. Because his music is original enough that I think it deserves its own philosophy and term. Okay, with that being said, let's have a listen to this. I'm sure that I can find a recording somewhere, and that recording is in the description to this video if you'd like to listen along. I mean, why wouldn't you? That's kind of the whole point of these vlogs. I will report back with my opinions on this thing, which I honestly don't think I've ever listened to before. I think I just downloaded the score at some point and have been meaning to do this. So, yeah. Okay, nice. So I like the introduction of all of these sort of like whistling sounds towards the end and the mix of like um, more clearly whistles to like um, sine tones moving up and down, like kind of like a radio frequency scanning. I thought that was a really interesting like merge of two identifiable sounds, which just add a completely different texture to the piece, and it works really well with the sort of like technique going on here, which is sort of more harmonic series focused. I apologize if I don't really have the language to describe this piece. I didn't really get in depth with some of these techniques, so for the entire piece, I think there's some sort of like half tone or blowing. There's no conventional playing going on, so it totally changes the relationship between the performer and the instrument. So yeah, it's kind of hard to describe, but it seems like they're not really blowing into the instrument completely, and it's sort of like a very quiet sound that needs to be amplified. But it makes this interesting sound world where like the uh, the notes that you get from the air pressure are kind of separate from the resonating sounds you get from what keys are depressed. And I think for the most part, it's just like lots of key click sounds get introduced at a certain point, and before that point, it's all just like blowing glissandi without changing the keys. Um, yeah, it's really kind of fascinating how it almost all occupies this lower octave of the instrument, but timbrally you get higher stuff when more air is introduced and stuff. But on the page, it appears like everything is just in the low octave. So I don't know. It's kind of it's just an interesting relationship um, between the performer and the instrument, I think. Uh, and of course, all the electronic sounds are interesting too, and they kind of inform the flute, and the flute informs them. Yeah, with Kokoras, he's very consistent with his style. For the most part, you know what you're going to get, and I don't think this one disappointed at all. Um, it's kind of interesting that he wrote this like 4 years after starting at UNT for another faculty member. I think that's kind of interesting. Um, I wonder what Elizabeth thinks of it and the notation and stuff. But yeah, that was our first Kokoras piece. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at Noah Noah by Kaija Saariaho, I believe. And that's our last flute and electronics one. Okay, so today we're looking at quite a famous piece for flute and electronics. It's called Noah Noah, and it's by Kaija Saariaho. I think it's from the 90s. So this is a very early piece with live electronics. The score itself is kind of like just two big pages in landscape. And you can see there's two staves at certain points in the score because the flautist is they have to like speak into the instrument at certain points. I believe they're speaking French syllables. Also, it was written for Camilla Hoitenga, who gave the first performance in Darmstadt on the 23rd of July, 1992. So I guess that answers that question. It's from at least 1992, maybe even earlier. The work was realized in Earcam Studios. So I guess this is when Saariaho was starting to get her big break working at Earcam. Noah Noah, meaning fragrant, was born from ideas I had for flute while writing my ballet music, Ma. I wanted to write down, exaggerate, even abuse certain flute mannerisms that had been haunting me for some years. Formerly, I was experimenting with the idea of developing several elements simultaneously, first one after another, then superimposed. The title refers to a woodcut by Paul Gauguin. It might be
series of woodcuts or something. It also refers to a traveling diary of the same name, so that's why I'm getting a bit confused here. Written during his visit to Tahiti from 1891 to 93. So again, we are seeing exoticism in solo flute writing, which I would argue was also a feature of Syrinx, even though that was about ancient Greece. And a couple other flute pieces we looked at already. So yeah, there's like this association with prehistory and you know obviously not considering the impact of colonialism on any of this, but yeah, Noa Noa is also a teamwork. It was written in collaboration with Camilla Hoitenga, the person who premiered it. The electronic part was developed by Jean-Baptiste Berriere with Xavier Chabot as programmer. I've actually seen Jean-Baptiste at a few conferences. He gave a talk or some sort of in memoriam speech at ICMC last year. So, yeah, a lot of these people are still active in the electroacoustic music scene in the US and abroad. Here's the text basically that gets sung into the flute. You can see it's like a mix of French words and also just sounds, like it breaks out into sound. Um, the word fleur is repeated, or flower, right, or la rose as well. Those words get repeated a lot. It's fragrant, so there's a lot of like words related to like the odors of flowers. And as for the electronics, so there is a bunch of like performance notes here. Um, but I think what is more interesting is probably how this thing was set up to run. So in order to run this piece, it's recommended you have a Mac computer with a CD-ROM drive, I guess, to play the fixed media component of the piece, which would have been played on CD in the Premiere. And that basically performance CPU needs to be compatible with a 7.1 system or higher. So you have to have some sort of interface that gives you 8 outs or whatever. Because I guess the file on the CD is 8 channel. Then you also need a MIDI interface of some kind. And this Lexicon sound processor. And also this Yamaha digital reverb. So these are probably effects units. You also need a sustain pedal triggering max. So the CPU is running the software max, right, which is probably also assisting with all of the routing. And then you need 1 or 2 microphones for the flute, and a mixer, and a PA with two loudspeakers. Yeah, you need all the software, like the max patches and some samples. This is all installed on a CD-ROM, which is available from Chester Music, I guess. So maybe there is no fixed media, and all of the only fixed things are these samples that are triggered, but all of the data is stored on a CD, so your CPU will need a CD-ROM drive just to like read all of this stuff. I think this is probably 1992. Is this before USB thumb drives? It's possible. Um, the ideal sound for amplification is a clear and rich, close sound. The microphone should be placed rather close to the instrument. The amount of amplification naturally depends on the concert space, but the amplified sound should not cover the acoustic sound of the instrument. The general level can be set rather loud, but not painfully so. So yeah, the reverb effect is a Lexicon LXP15. Lexicon LXP15. This thing, it's a multi-effects processor. So this thing should have a preset, I guess, in which reverb time is changed by the amplitude of the input signal. So the quieter the sound, the longer the reverb. It doesn't specify if it has a name or anything. The instrumentalist triggers the changes in the LXP15 effect and starts the pre-recorded audio material. The pedal changes are marked in the score with circle numbers. It's like a MIDI pedal, I guess. And there's 63 cues, so that's a lot of cues for a 10-minute piece, which is I'm assuming the duration of this. You also need someone on hand for making sure the mix is good. This is like the 1998 version, so they may not have even had access to this equipment when it was premiered in 1992. So this is an updated version. What's the other piece of gear here? This is also a multi-effects thing. Oh yeah, the MIDI pedal is a sustain pedal, I guess, because we want to avoid the sound of the pedal clicking. So yeah. So I guess there's some alternatives here that are offered, right? So instead of the LXP15, you could use a PCM80, also Lexicon, or you could use TC Electronics 5000. So I'm assuming the max patch is just sort of working with sending MIDI signals or whatever to this effects unit. So this is probably before Max MSP had a lot of different, or had the maybe before computers had the processing power to just like run effects in Max, you know? So yeah, kind of an interesting little piece of history there. This is the flautist who premiered it, Camilla Hoitenga. She's well known for her close work with Saariaho and also Stockhausen. Praised by the New York Times for her seamless blend of technical brilliance and expressive depth. She's premiered concertos by Saariaho, Peter Kozengi, and Kenichiro Kobayashi. Her repertoire ranges from Baroque to interdisciplinary projects. Based in Cologne in North Carolina, she also teaches and mentors worldwide. I encourage you to click on the link in the video description so that you can listen to this piece with me today. Okay, so this was an interesting one. As it turns out, I'm not very familiar with this piece, but yeah, it had a lot more going on in the electronics than I expected. We have like pre-recorded flute towards the beginning of the piece. I think that was mentioned in the performance notes, which is then cued later. And we also have just fixed media samples, so flute samples and particularly spoken word samples that are just come with the piece. Those are also triggered by the MIDI pedal. And then we have like stuff in the live electronics part that is modulated by the flautist that's playing, right? So yeah, it was kind of interesting how all of these things came together. Kind of hard to get an impression of it when it's kind of hard to get an impression of it when it's just like a stereo recording on YouTube, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Her writing is very pretty. I like the use of multiphonics in it, and I like how it starts off with this very like unnaturally long reverb, which kind of sets the stage for more um, electronics, electronic components kind of interfering with the flute sound. And I also like this like distinction between like
the performer singing into the flute, and then also like the flute, like playing the flute, modulating the speaking. So like playing into the spoken word versus speaking into the playing. It's like a really interesting kind of distortion of reality. Tomorrow, let me see what's on the docket. I am not quite sure. Possibly this Kory Reader piece or this Eva-Maria Houben piece. These are the solo piccolo scores I have. Okay, today's piece is On a Clear Day by Kory Reader for solo piccolo. And this is from 2017. Really, it's older than I thought. Um, I thought this was like I did see a solo piccolo piece of Kory's um, when I was in Denton during my doctorate, but I don't know if it was this piece. I'm assuming it was, but the score looks a lot more active than what I heard. So maybe this is a separate piccolo piece. I and also like 2017 is quite early, right? I think the piece of his that I heard would have been later, and I can't even remember if it was a piccolo piece or a flute piece. But anyways, this is the score I downloaded. It's not clear who it's dedicated to, if anyone. And there's two staves, so one is for unvoiced, and one is just marked voiced. So I'm not sure the distinction. I guess we'll find out when we hear it in context. Okay. Yeah, so it is performed by the same flautist, Aleyna Clarice, and it's 2019 in this album, not 2017. So I guess I did hear this live. Um, it's a longer piece, 12 minutes. I remember it having a lot of silences and being very quiet. I can't remember if Kory was happy with the performance, um, but I felt like it was quite psychedelic. Like it was the most extreme piece of Kory's that I'd heard up until that point. The album that this is on is called Texas. So I guess this it's a series of albums that he made in Denton, Texas. There's 13 volumes so far, and this is volume 2. So I think they're somewhat chronological. And yeah, he made this album after 5 years of living in Texas. Maybe he released all of these volumes at once in 2023, sort of like to celebrate completing his doctorate or something. But anyways, Kory recently got a appointment as a professor at Bard College in New York. So he is no longer living in Texas as of next August, shortly after this episode is releasing. So um, yeah, maybe this is a good time to be revisiting this stuff of his. Um, if you are watching, Kory, congrats on the job. That's a really great news. I hope the contract continues to be renewed. This is On a Clear Day. Hey, yeah. So with this score, I think I do remember Aleyna premiering this piece, but this recording is a lot more polished than that performance, I think. And it's also close mic'd, so it's a very different experience than hearing it in a hall. But now that I've seen the score, I can say that this is a lot closer to the score than what I remember Aleyna playing years ago. Um, this unvoiced stuff uh, is really
it's an interesting technique. It's also not well described in this score because there's no front matter. But it's clear that Kory wants like this very specific sound and this very specific technique of playing that gives you this sort of unpredictable um, creeping in of like upper partials and um, yeah, it's very distinct from the conventional playing, which is in the voiced stuff. There's also like bisbigliando and whistle tones and certain partials you have to bring out rhythmically and stuff. So yeah, it's quite an undertaking. Obviously, lots of silences. This whistle tone section at the end ends up taking up like 3 minutes of the runtime, maybe more. Um, so yeah, it is a very extreme piece. Performers aren't necessarily creative people, so and they may not necessarily understand their instrument in a deep way. They might not know any extended techniques, so uh, to give them something like this, I think it takes a very special player to get it right, and I think Kory probably did a lot of directing here to get this recording the way it is. But yeah, I think Aleyna did a really great job. And again, I remember the premiere being worse, but also that's just my memory, so it may not be correct. It's also a little bit clouded by my interactions with Kory at the time and knowing what he wanted out of the piece and stuff like that. So, yeah, I wish I had that kind of uh, discipline. Well, not discipline, but just I wish I had those sort of interactions with performers where I really got what I wanted. I think I tend to not really take a directorial role. I just kind of let some performances be shit and um, others be good. And I think Kory, I think he has certain standards and really spends a lot of time working with performers. So, yeah, that was on a clear day. Tomorrow we have a piccolo piece by another Wanda Weiser composer, and then we might have a third piece with piccolo that will close off the series. Yeah, the day after tomorrow, I am flying to New York, so I may or may not be able to record that one on time. It depends if I can do it on one of my layovers or something, because I'm going to the airport straight after work. So, yeah. Today's piece is by Eva-Maria Houben. It's called Calm, Silence, Solitude, and it's for solo piccolo. 2005, catalog number 16.058. For Anne Horstman, listening to Hector Berlioz. Anne Horstman being a flautist. Begin either with one or with two. One and two back and forth. Conclude with either one or with two. Then we have page labeled 1. Begin anywhere. Play one line after another. Finish anywhere at the end of a line. The end of a line go to 2. One sound on a fill-in note head or several sounds on one quiet breath. One air sound on a diamond note head or several sounds on one quiet breath. Break to take breath. A short pause between the lines, and while changing from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 1, there either is a break to breath or breathe, or it remains silent for a moment. On the whole, soft and silent. And then at the end of the score, we have 2, some performance notes labeled 2, and it says sounds may be or omitted or repeated.
You may read to and fro, move freely between A, B, and C. Anytime you may return to 1. Arrows mean a bit higher or a bit lower between the sounds and while changing from 1 to 2 or 2 to 1. If there is a break to uh, if there's either is a break to breathe or a short stop. So yeah, I guess the manner of playing that categorizes these notes too, it's broken up into A, B, and C. A is multiphonics, one multiphonic per note. B is tongue pizzicato, and C is whistle tones. So yeah, I guess one, the first mode of playing is just like normal playing or air sounds, and it's designated by the note head. And then the second mode of playing is three other playing methods, which you sort of freely alternate between. Um, and I guess it's open to the performer. Like maybe you change from mannerism 1 to mannerism 2 every line, every once in a while, every page, you know. Um, Here's what the notation looks like if you're curious. Everything has an open tie. Occasionally you get these check marks, which we saw in our last Houben episode. They indicate pauses, basically. So in this case, moments to breathe. The piece is around 40 something pages or 36 pages, and it's over 30 minutes long, the recording. So I think a typical performance you're spending about a minute on each page. If you're interested in this composer, Eva-Maria Houben, I would go to the previous episode we did on her. We looked at one of her organ pieces, I think. Um, a link to this piece is in the video description. It'll be to the Bandcamp recording here. And it's part of a larger album of works for solo flute. So if you're interested, you can support the artist by buying this CD. It's about 15 euros. I think I know what I'm in for more or less here. Um, if this really interests you, I would highly encourage you to also look into um, this record label, Wandelweiser Records, and also the larger collective of composers that is Wandelweiser. And yeah, let's get into this one since it's quite an undertaking here. Okay, so yeah, it's an interesting listen. Kind of difficult to kind of difficult to follow along with the score because I think the performer is able to freely jump between lines as they wish, but it's definitely broken up into these phrases of music. Um, I think the score is more useful for a performer than a listener. Kind of isn't really meant for listening with. And I think a lot of the interesting things of the piece are more like from the performance's perspective. I guess listening to it is interesting too, but I think it's really more meant to be experienced as a performer. Yeah, I liked it sticks to the lower octave of the piccolo, actually like the lowest sixth, really. I don't think it gets above that B very much. So it's a really uncharacteristic register of the piccolo. It's really interesting register of the piccolo to explore. And of course, when you do whistle tones and all of the multiphonics in this, I believe, were overblown. When you do all those more timbral effects, it's like accesses the higher register of the instrument. Um, But yeah, because it's a piccolo, nothing really goes below that D5. So it's a very constrained kind of listening experience, I would say, but also very intimate and sort of like, I don't know, a lot of the like air sounds and more delicate sounds, where you could almost hear like little bird songs or things in them. Really kind of interesting. Some similar sounds to the Kory Reader piece we looked at yesterday. Here's that episode if you want to compare, but like a completely different approach to notation and interfacing with the performer, right? This is like way more open, way more free. Yeah, of course, it still requires a certain familiarity with the composer's style to know how to play it, but um, the the score at least gives the illusion that it's like very free and minimalistic. So yeah, tomorrow we are well, maybe not tomorrow, but the next episode we will be finishing the series with a piece by Javier Torres Maldonado, and that's a solo piece, but it's a multi-movement work for piccolo, flute, bass flute, one player. I think it'll be a really nice way to finish our flute series. And yeah, that's that. All right, so today's piece is by Javier Torres Maldonado. It's called, I think it's this one, Primer Libro del Canto Alado. It's a solo flute piece, but the three movements are progressively lower flutes, I think. The first movement is for piccolo. Second movement is for alto flute. I actually haven't looked at any alto flute yet. And then the last movement is fourth movement's for bass flute. Where's the third here? And third is for regular flute. So, yeah, the whole thing is 6 minutes long. So these are miniatures effectively, and they're very fast actually. The first one is at least. Yeah, wow. All of them are, yeah, quite fast. So it looks fairly interesting actually. Funded by the I guess the National Arts Council of Mexico. Uh, yeah, as many of his other pieces are. Dedicated to Mario Caroli. I'm assuming this is a flautist. I should also mention this is the last um, episode of the flute series. So I will talk a little bit about my thoughts on the series at the end and put a timestamp in there. Mario Caroli is a flautist. Uh, this is his. This is one bio on Miyazawa website. This is actually more of an interview. So yeah, no bios here actually. But maybe I can find the recording of him playing it. Yeah, here it is. It's more like 7 minutes. So yeah, why don't I bang this out and I'll let you know what I think. Okay. So as always with Javier's pieces, the proportions of the thing are really interesting. His multi-movement works, I should say. The flute one is like the centerpiece, and it's 3 minutes long, and then all the other ones are much shorter. With the piccolo being like a decent size miniature, the bass flute and the alto flute ones are like super short. Yeah, lots of interesting techniques. I should probably give you the titles of the movements too, I realized. And also a translation of the actual title. Okay, so it translates to roughly to First Book of the Winged Song. For the first movement, the piccolo one is the Nightingale, the Stairs. Second movement, Light of the Moon. Third movement, Flight, and fourth movement, Reminiscence of the Nocturne Wind. Um, Interesting that the most substantial one is just called has the simplest title. All the other ones have more elaborate ones. Um, yeah, really striking opening. I love the piccolo stuff, and I like the way that he sort of layers different parameters of flute playing. Like there's always something significant going on with like either switching between air sound and normal playing, or in this case, adding flutter tongue in certain moments and on top of rapid playing. Um, yeah, I think honestly the piccolo one was probably my favorite. But that just like contrast like of the first two movements, boom boom. That's really satisfying, and I also like getting into the third one and having spending lots of extra time on one. This repeated note idea seems to be a little bit more substantial. There's more you can do with it. So yeah, it's interesting that the third movement gets more development and stuff. Great piece to end the series on, I think, because it's like probably the most virtuosic flute thing we looked at, and it features every instrument in the family. We went through all those instruments in the series. Um, my thoughts on the series. So this one, I got to revisit a lot of pieces from my old, from my doctorate from University of North Texas, because that school has such a robust flute studio in terms of their new music playing. Elizabeth McNutt's there. So a lot of flute music comes out of that school. I got to revisit some pieces from old colleagues. But also, I think the rest of the pieces are pretty stacked too. Lots of new composers that we haven't featured on the channel yet, like Tomoko Fukui, Andra Delora May. I think it was our first Kokoras episode and our first Varese. Um, so yeah, and all the other ones were like a lot of the other ones were composers who. Oh yeah, Emmanuel Ontiveros, that was the first, and Sami Seif was the first. So yeah, just really expanding the repertoire covered on this channel. So I think that's really refreshing because past couple series before this one, honestly, it was just like all old shit we've looked at before. Um, like same composers as always. So this was nice and refreshing. While I'm here, I may as well figure out what the next series will be. If you're not familiar, I just randomly pick a genre from what's left. Let's get rid of the flute ones and see what's next. Okay, bass clarinet and marimba. Uh, Hopefully, I have enough recordings out of here. I probably will. These scores were, I got them all at once from a specific ensemble. This is not a standardized um, ensemble, obviously, but I forget their name. There's a Boston-based new music ensemble that does this stuff. Transient Canvas. That's the group. That's the group I'm thinking of. So yeah, they provided all these scores to students at the University of North Texas when they had a, a like reading session workshop type thing in I think 2022. And yeah, it's 8 scores. Most of them have recordings, and yeah, that will be next, I guess.